A warm welcome to our global celebration of Indian women on International Women's Day to mark this very special occasion. My name is Rita Kakati-Shah and I shall be moderating today's event. I'd like to start by welcoming Consul General, Mr. Randhir Jaiswal, to say a few words to open our event today. Mr. Randhir Jaiswal, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. Warm greetings from the Indian Consulate in New York. Happy International Women's Day to all of you and to all those who are watching this show. Today is a special day. We are celebrating women, their achievement, their success, their energy, and all the positivity that they create in our lives. For us in India, we have tried our best. We are doing our best that we will achieve Sustainable Development Goal 5 on time, that is by 2030. And in the last several years, you would have seen all our socio-economic programs of the Government of India are focused to bring out the best of women folk in India and make them equal partners in our path to progress and development. Be it the Clean India program, that is Swachh Bharat, building toilets across the length and breadth of our country, to clean cooking stove program called Ujjwala, to Mudra soft loan scheme, or the financial inclusion program of Jan Dhan Yojana, under which we've opened 450 million bank accounts. 55% of the beneficiaries there are women. So all in all, we are trying to do our best. You all must be aware of the Indian startup ecosystem. Today, it is the third largest in the world and growing at a very fast pace. We have upwards of 60,000 startups in India. And let me tell you, almost 50% of them have women as directors. Almost 5 to 6 of them, the new ones, which have achieved unicorn status, have women as co-founders or as founders. So they are reaching there, hitting it right there. Today, what is of great satisfaction to me, let me tell you, is that we have several conversations on women empowerment and celebrating International Women's Day. In the morning, we had a program where we had women leaders from across continents and cultures, from Africa, from Europe, from India, from the United States, from this part of the world, all speaking about and bring their perspectives. We had that celebration. Now we have this beautiful celebration on International Women's Day being anchored by Rita Kakati-Shah and our dear friends. And then 5 o'clock, we have another session of the community here in New Jersey celebrating women. So we have several, and we also had one on 5th. So all in all, there are so many things that are happening. And I'm particularly happy that, we have so much of conversation and we have brought women empowerment to the mainstream of discussion today. Let me also, let me also share one data point with you. Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao has been one of the special Government of India programs. Save Daughter, Educate Daughter program. One state in India, the state of Haryana, has been a laggard when it comes to women empowerment or in terms of sex ratio. But in last 5 years, let me tell you, the sex ratio in the state of Haryana in India has gone up from 876 to 926. That's a huge jump. Of course, we have some distance yet to travel, but we are on that road. Also, a personal story. Here in the consulate, we have a very conducive environment for women empowerment because 70% of our employees are women, 1. And 2, the captain of this ship has 3 women in the family, my 2 daughters and my wife. So all that makes it a very happy celebration each International Day and each day of the year. Also, another on that note, a personal story. My dear daughters, my 2 daughters, always press me very hard when something goes wrong, when something happens with women. And I argue with them that yes, things are changing. Things have changed a lot since I was a child. But they keep pressing me hard that they want revolutionary changes. And they maintain their point. They maintain their stand. Just yesterday, a friend of mine who returned from Bihar, he runs a school here, he stays here in New Jersey. He told me a story that there was some incident in his village And the elders, they wanted to save the boy and that he be given the last chance. The matter went to the police. In the end, the whole village got together to decide on how to go forward. Obviously, it was a scripted discussion gathering, but all of a sudden everything changed because the girls from his school, they all descended in the meeting and they all made one point, and very emphatically, that all the time it is women who have to change, women who have to adjust. Time has come that the same may be told to the men folk. And that was a new reality for him, going from New Jersey to his village. So I see a clear parallel between what the kind of discussion I have with my daughters here in New York and what's happening on the ground in a village in India. The point I'm making is that even in conservative and traditional societies, we have come at that inflection point where people and girls are saying and women are saying that we want to take things in our hand. So that is what I wanted to drive home. I mean, something that was very special. But on that note, on that very positive note, let me congratulate Rita for this excellent book that she's written, The Goddess of Go-Getting. It is an inspirational journey into all that she has achieved and all that she wants to share with the world at large, so that we can all learn from her and grow and progress into the world of gender equality, into the world of women empowerment, and do well for ourselves and for the world at large. So on that note, let me once again launch the book. Here is the book, and we fully support your work, your authorship, and all that you're doing. And not just you, but all the beautiful women, all our very spectacular and successful women that we have on the panel, from Tara, Seema, Baishakhi, I see, Sonia, several others. So all of you, you are true champions, and we are there to support you and make women across the world equal partners in our life, in our life journey, and in creating happiness and joy around us. Thank you very much. It is a distinct honor and a pleasure for the Consul General of India to be part of this beautiful program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Randhir ji, for that wonderful introduction to our event and your thoughts on the International Women's Day. Very, very touched, especially because you shared your personal story and your daughters, who are the future of tomorrow. I'm also incredibly grateful and very humbled to have you launch my book today. It's very special. Thank you very much. So I wanted to say a few words about the book. The Goddess of Go-Getting is a book that I hope readers will find empowering and uplifting. It's a reflection of my lived experiences, my personal journey. It celebrates diversity through my work, and it's about empowering women, minorities, and the youth of tomorrow. It's going to challenge you to embrace change. It's going to challenge you to think differently, and you take ownership of your impact on society. The Goddess of Go-Getting is a book for everybody. It's a business book, yet it's written in the relatable style of a memoir. And it highlights the importance of confidence, communication, and ownership, with a call for policy and societal changes to support the backbone of our economy. Available on all these online platforms and major retailers, please do feel free to go out and get yourself a copy so you can start changing that world and becoming that goddess of go-getting yourself. I wanted to say thank you very much again. Now, moving on to the agenda, we have a very inspiring panel of the creme de la creme of high-flying Indian women from across North America, comprising today of Baishakhi Taylor. She's the Dean of the College and Vice President for Campus Life at Smith College for Massachusetts. We have Mona Sinha. She's a board advisor, a philanthropist, and a gender equality advocate from New York. We have Seema Kumar. She's the Global Head, Office of Innovation, Global Health and Scientific Engagement at Johnson & Johnson, and the founder of Sinha from New Jersey. We have Sonia Chaliha, Global Head of Business Development for Corporate Trust of BNY Mellon, New York. And we have Tara Bhuyan, Creative Director of Tara Bhuyan Couture, Toronto. So welcome, ladies, to the panel discussion. I offer you congratulations for being here today and a very happy International Women's Day. So, it is International Women's Day, and the theme this year is Break the Bias. So Baishakhi, I wanted to start off with you. You are in the field of education. You help shape ideas and the mindsets for the future. What does break the bias mean for you?
First, thank you. Thanks to the Consul General, thanks to Rita, and to all these amazing women. What an honor to be on this panel with each one of you on International Women's Day. That's an incredible question, Rita. For me, in my capacity and in the role I serve, I think in breaking the bias really means us looking for true equality. And we do that, or at least I try to do that by questioning our own assumption, my own assumption, and staying in conversation with the past and the present to be able to sit in the discomfort of not knowing and accepting that our mind and heart must grow to accommodate and understand the changing needs of all the people around us and of the changing needs of the world as it evolves. It also means that we need to treat all humans equally, no matter where they are and no matter how complicated each individual situation might be. So, and I hope to do that, to continue to try question my own implicit bias and the implicit bias that exists in the world through the process of education and constantly checking my own assumptions.
Very well said, Baishakhi. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, especially because you come from that very inspirational forefront of being able to influence the next generation. Mona, moving on to you. You are a gender equality advocate who is dedicated to the very cause of International Women's Day. Talk to us about the significance of Break the Bias for you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you to the Consul General for having us all here today. You know, issues that impact women and girls are a very manifestation of societal biases. Gender bias around the world, not just in India, but around the world, really stand in the way of access, of opportunity, and ultimately economic agency. So just to give you a few statistics, you know, women on average earn 73 cents on the dollar that every man earns, even if they do exactly the same work. In the field of higher education, which Baishakhi knows very well, 60% of students are women today. But if you look at the numbers of tenured faculty, that's only 30%. And, you know, we've seen in healthcare, we've just been through an unprecedented 2 years of a healthcare crisis. 70% of those working in the healthcare field at the very starting level are women. But if you look at the leadership in the healthcare field, that's only 25% women. So you can see along the trajectory, women drop out of the pipeline, and that's largely due to systemic biases that exist in there. And in the philanthropy sector too, which we have talked about it being important, you know, to address these changes, only 1.6% of all philanthropic dollars go towards women and girls. I mean, that's shocking. So in my work as chair of Women Moving Millions, we have made it our mission to catalyze unprecedented resources to advance the leadership of women and girls. And to date, we're close to catalyzing $1 billion into this field. And during the pandemic, we launched the Give Bold, Get Equal campaign, which raised $100 million to address these systemic inequities which we were seeing being revealed in all their glory. We couldn't deny them anymore. And I also work very hard at the Equal Rights Amendment Coalition work, because some people would be surprised to know that the US Constitution is the only democratic constitution in the world that doesn't include women. So that's a battle that's been going on for about 100 years and needs to be resolved. And with my association with Smith, which Baishakhi knows, I'm a proud Smith College graduate, and with Columbia Business School, we invest in women entrepreneurs and leaders for the next generation. So I think if we want to grow our economies to be equitable and to provide equality, we have to invest in and center the needs of women and girls as leaders for the future, because they are proximate to the problems that the world faces, and they often find the best solutions.
That's so well said, Mona, and quite eye-opening. The statistics that you shared brings really to bear the reality of what we faced in, and then shows the incredible work that you're doing to increase the funding, to increase the resources, to actually do something and walk the talk, so to speak, in life. So thank you again for sharing that. Seema, moving on to you. You are an influencer, not only in the pharmaceutical space, but you helm a magazine and a platform, Seema, that specifically uplifts women. Talk to us about Break the Bias from your point of view.
Well, thank you again, Rita, for having me. And, it's so wonderful to be with all these amazing women here on this panel, and to the Consulate General for hosting this. Really appreciate it. And congratulations on your book. Really, really looking forward to reading it. So for me, break the bias means, well, first of all, let's talk about bias, right? Bias is something that is human nature. But how do you make sure that the unconscious bias and biases that we have, that we check ourselves constantly, so and break it constantly? So for women in the workplace, in the corporate environment, I would say that, it progresses. So first of all, when you're hired in, more men are hired in and promoted than women. And out of 100 men who are hired and promoted, only 72 women are hired and promoted. And then once you get in, there comes a point of actually moving up the chain in the organization. And again, there the numbers speak the truth. So men make it faster up to the leadership ranks than women. And so there is biases there that are inherent. The third one is, of course, the pregnancy penalty, as I call it, which is that, when you are pregnant or you become a mother, a lot of times the plum assignments or a project that requires intense activity that could potentially get you promoted don't make it to your desk because you're quote unquote not at your prime, so to speak. And then finally, when you do get to the leadership position, there can be microaggressions. So she's too abrasive, she's too aggressive, whereas a man, it would be much more, oh, he's so much more assertive. So there's biases all through, even though we've made a lot of progress, there's biases. And the last thing I'll say is in the entrepreneurial arena, moving away from corporate and into the founder startup arena, the access to capital continues to be a huge issue for women. And so, only 2.2 of all venture capital went to women, and only 0.8% of all the exits were women-owned businesses. And so that's what, to me, gender bias is, but we don't have time to talk about it, but maybe we will talk about it at the next question, which is there are solutions to this. And so I think the solutions are to, first of all, check ourselves and constantly question and, check our biases. Second, put systems in place which actually can at least eliminate or mitigate bias. And third, I think, is a mindset shift. So that needs to happen before any other systemic change actually can take place.
Very, very well said, Seema. Thank you for sharing that. And you share a very unique perspective. You come from the corporate world, but you also have the founder entrepreneurial hat as well. So you have that unique lens of seeing and doing both at the same time. So you can actually see the biases in reality. So I love how you actually equate them together and can pinpoint really where these issues that actually lie are. So thank you for sharing that. Sonia, moving on to you. You are in the world of finance, known for its male-dominated presence. What does break the bias mean to you?
So first off, thank you, Rita, and thank you to the Consul General for allowing me to join the panel today. So really, I'm picking up on the themes that Mona and Seema mentioned. For me, breaking the bias means challenging the long-standing behavioural and leadership stereotypes that have been able to persist in the industry, that of course stem historically from a white male-dominated culture who've been able to hire in their own image. Long-held notions that women are not as competent or as capable as men, that women need to prove themselves in ways that you would never ask a man to do so, and men are somehow seen as more trusted. And a work culture, as you know, Rita, from your days in the finance industry, that historically judges you on the number of hours spent in the office versus the quality of the output, which invariably disadvantages women at various stages of their lives. As Seema mentioned, the pregnancy penalty, who may be juggling childcare and other domestic responsibilities, and despite usually working harder, because we know that's the case, because they're not as visible, may be judged as less engaged or less committed. And then, of course, the backlash that women face as leaders, even from other women, which is very, very interesting, as they become leaders. Because the embodiment of a leader still in our industry, like in many other industries, are male in their attributes and their characteristics, such that if a woman is too direct or asserts herself, or she's viewed as abrasive, difficult, and bossy, And yet a man behaving in exactly the same way, people say, oh, yes, he's an excellent leader, what a strong leader he is. So then why do we have to adopt male characteristics in order to get ahead and still get criticized anyway? It beggars belief. So in short, what breaking the bias means to me is about creating a level playing field so that we can be judged in a workplace on our merits and the quality of our output, not our gender. And where preconceived notions of gender leadership are dispelled and replaced instead with objective standards by which to measure effective leadership.
Sonia, thank you for sharing that, and very well said. I mean, you know, sharing my own story as well, coming from finance, I 100% agree with exactly what you said there, because it is an environment which is almost slanted against if you don't exert exactly the same tendencies as those that have made it into leadership. And when you do, it's like, oh, that person's a little bit too masculine, or this person's there, or something like that. So it's almost like you're fighting against the grain in so many ways. One thing that I found is, as we've hit the pandemic and we're now in more of a hybrid structure, the study that McKinsey did at the start of the pandemic, where they showed that 1 in 4 women were leaving the workforce after the hybrid structure, after the working from home structure started, because not only were they slanted with doing their work full time, they were also taking up more of the household responsibilities as well. And I think things like that were more hidden a couple of years ago, but are starting to slowly get more exposed and talked about now. So I would just agree with you, Sonia, and sort of add to that in terms of breaking the biases, sort of opening people's eyes a bit, sort of showing them what's out there, showing that empathy and the other skills, which 100% are still very much involved in leadership, are very much there as well in terms of breaking the bias. So thanks so much again for sharing that. I'm going to move on to you, Tara. You're from the fashion world, and you're often jet-setting internationally for your various fashion shows, collaborations, and your projects. Talk to us about break the bias from your perspective.
Thank you, Rita, and thank you to the Consul General. And it's so much fun being here and honored to be here. It's Rita, you're right, and all the panelists, I think you covered most of the points. I know I've come from a corporate world and now as an entrepreneur in the fashion world, but I want to touch something basic. You know, saying we see each other as equals and actually seeing each other as equal are two separate things. Saying and seeing. Words are different to actions. Seeing each other as equals in practice would mean having equal pay for all, having meaningful childcare solutions for families so women's careers are not negatively impacted by having children. Seeing it in practice would mean increasing number of women in positions of power across industries, politics. But most importantly for me, seeing it in practice would mean an end of violence, the end to violence. I think all the panelists here, all the people in this panel would agree to make this world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. I think a woman should start by breaking the bias at home. A woman should have equal rights and be inclusive at her own home first, in words and in actions, because then this woman, the daughter, the wife, the mother, can be the role model to the next generations of sons and daughters. If we show this example at home, we can be the best role model for this world in all aspects, now and for the generations to come. A woman should have equal strength to decide her place at home and in the world. So let's break the bias at home first. Thanks.
So well said, Darba. Thank you for sharing that, because quite often the perception is on breaking the bias. Look at others. What can others do differently? But ultimately, there's ownership on ourselves too. What happens in our own lives? What are the conversations we have with our own kids, our own partners and spouses? What are things we do when we go to friends' houses? And you naturally have a little bit of a divide, but you have a perception where, you know, somebody's cooking a barbecue, and a stereotypical example is where all the men go out to the grill and the women are in the kitchen picking up dishes. Things like that. What are we doing at home to start breaking those biases? Because that is what's influencing the young ones and the future conversations later on as well. So thank you for sharing that, because it shows you it's not just home, it's society, it's politics, it's the workforce, it's everything working in unison together. Thank you so much. Now moving on to the next question. You all do such meaningful work in your own fields. and you're very much not only influencers, but role models to so many. Baishakhi, if I can start with you, why do you think role models are so important to have, particularly in the formative years of education?
That's a great question. I was pondering on this question, Rita, and I was looking up sort of who's a role model, particularly in education. And, the most common term we use is that of a mentor, to have a mentor who serves as a role model. And at least in Western tradition and literary history, it's the first role model documented is Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who I think it's important to mention on this particular day is a woman. I think role model is really critical in the formative years because representation matters, right? Especially when you are going through your education or the academic arc, particularly in college where I work, you learn a lot in the classroom from your research, from your peers. But at the same time, when you have a role model, what you see in that person is that representation, particularly for women. I think, I work at a women's institution, to see other women who are doing research, who are groundbreaking, where you get an opportunity to share your experience with them, learn from their journeys, their challenges, their opportunity. And then also to learn through their experience and to know that you have the safety and the trust that someone will hold up the mirror to you as you are going through that journey. And never question, right, that anybody can be a role model, but to see that representation, I think, is really critical, because that gives, at least in my experience, that gives you that trust, that confidence, that ability to feel like if this person has done it, so can I, right? So we all carry the tradition and history of the women who have walked before us. And that's where I would say that having a role model in the formative years is really key. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be, somebody who you work with. It could be in your family. My grandmother continues to be one of my most the aspiration that I want to become, and that's got nothing to do with the professional world necessarily. So I think it's great to have multiple role models in whom from whom we can learn and grow.
Wonderfully said, Baishakhi, because to your point, role models are someone who inspires you, but you get that inspiration from so many different walks of life. And you start at home, you start with your family. Who in your family is that role model that inspires you and that you sort of wish you could be one day? And, to your point as well, today it is International Women's Day, but we're in Women's History Month. So this is the time to kind of think, who are those historical women figures in our lives that we can see, whether it's a grandparent, whether it's a politician, a historian, somebody who's made a trailblazing change to make things better for us. And that's exactly it, when you pave that way forward for the next generation. So thank you for sharing that. Mona, if I can move on to you. You have your finger in so many pots at the same time of influence, so to speak. What do you see as role models playing the part in your work?
Rita, there has been so much wonderful wisdom shared on this panel already. And as Marian Wright Edelman, who was the president of the Children's Defense Fund, said, you can't be what you can't see. And that's really important. And I think Baishakhi alluded to that when she said we have to have examples of what we can be in our lives, whether they be from grandmothers. I had a wonderful grandmother too, who really influenced me in my thinking, or it be in the professional workplace, so wherever in everyday life. So when I began my career on Wall Street, I didn't see many women who looked like me, and I didn't see a clear progression or a path ahead that frankly I aspired to. And so the role of a mentor is very important because it comes with a trust-based relationship. It comes with somebody who can actually see you for what you can potentially become. Often we don't have the self-confidence as young people to see what we could potentially become. So a mentor is that person who sees that sparkling gem in you and who does everything in an unconditional way. There's nothing that we gain more as mentors than the satisfaction of seeing those we mentor succeed in their chosen field. And I have hundreds of mentees, actually, many from Smith College, many from other parts of the world where I work in the field of gender equality. And you know, it's very difficult for an individual to solely be responsible for their trajectory and their so-called success. It takes a village, right? I mean, we know it takes a village to raise a family and a child. So imagine one person going on this journey alone, trying to figure it out. Because often there are systemic barriers, as we spoke about. You know, many of us talked about the systemic barriers that are here. There could be nepotism, there could be, you know, gatekeeping, so many things that you really don't know how to circumvent, but someone who's had that experience before you can probably give you some insight that'll help you along the way. And they're competitive fields, right? And frankly, after this pandemic situation where people have realized the biases against not just gender, but race and, you know, class in many parts of the world, as we are breaking these biases and we're putting women of color into these leadership positions, it's more important than ever to provide them with the scaffolding and with the support that they need to succeed. Because the last thing we want is for them to feel unsupported and to fail. So I think as women especially, but also as men, all the men out there who are watching, keep a list handy of all the women that you would recommend. People ask me all the time for positions that need to be filled, or board positions, or just speaker options. Keep that list handy and pull it out when people ask you, do you have someone you think about for this position, right? And say, yes, I do, it's right here. Because we have an ageless women's network here. And I think we can tackle the old boys network absolutely head on by being really successful mentors and supporting the generation, because we do stand on the shoulders of the giants who went before us.
That's so well said, Mona. Thank you so much. Because to your point, you know, unless you see it, how can you be it? And I love the analogy you made of seeing a mentor that sees those gems of wisdom inside you, and they're the ones that can extract it and put your name forward and do that. So that's a really, really proactive example of how, as a mentor, you can really help somebody and champion them going forward and actually make that happen, and standing on those the shoulders of the giants ahead of us. I love that analogy. Thank you. So now moving on to you, Seema. Your digital platform and magazine spotlights role models. What skills do you look for in your role models, and why is that important?
Thank you. You know, as Mona was saying, you know, if you can't, and you know, to quote Marian Wright Edelman, if you can't be it, you can. If you can't see it, you can't be it. And the flip side of it is true. If you can see it, you can be it. And so I think that part of what the role model, why we try to portray role models and women who have been successful in so many different fields, and how they have sort of come up, you know, through their journey, is an important part of what we do as part of Seema. Now, you can, so once you see a role model, you can aspire to be like that role model, but then it takes somebody to enable you to create that pathway for you to get there. How do you get there? And that is where a mentor comes into play. And, you know, I have so many thoughts about mentors, but somebody I interviewed recently, Indra Nui, summarized it best. She said, there are two types of mentors. There's a mentor with a big M, and there's a mentor with a small m. The mentor with a small m can have a cup of tea with you, give you some advice, you know, listen to you, and, you know, sympathize with you. And it's sort of occasional, and you know, it's good. But the mentor with a big M invests in you. They actually see something in you that you yourself may sometimes not see. And they invest time, energy, and effort in making sure that they're championing you within the organization, outside of the organization, so much so that they actually put themselves, you know, behind the scenes and would not be threatened if you actually took their job away from them. And so those role models are the role models with the big M. So at the end of the day, I think representation is really important. And I think that that is the pathway. It's table stakes. I think we need that before we can actually get progress. But in addition, how can we really scale up mentorship at a large level? I mean, mentorship one-on-one is great, but how can we actually institutionalize it and make it bigger and scale it up? I think that that is the key question.
Wonderfully said, Seema. Thank you so much. And to your analogy, actually, I know one thing Indranui said was with the big M mentor, that the big M mentor is the one that actually seeks out the mentee, because that's how much they believe in that person to say, you know what, I see something, you may not even see it yourself, but I see it and I'm going to help you because I can exactly picture where you're going to be going in 5-10 years time. So I love that analogy with the small M, big M there. Thank you so much. Sonia, moving on to you. In finance, you hear a lot about mentors and role models that positively influence careers. Why do you think having a role model or mentor is particularly important, especially in finance?
So what Mona said just now really resonated with me, because I think it mirrors to a certain degree my own experience. And also moving from obviously the UK, where you have things like the glass ceiling, moving to the US, where you have to navigate a different type of corporate America. And it's about really not the things that are unseen, and the ways to navigate the workplace that aren't really there. So I just want to give credit to Baishakhi for saying that representation does matter, and without it, we don't have inclusion. So for the finance industry, whilst it's changing a little bit too slowly. And as we've already established, the normative behaviour in the workplace is largely male in an industry which is both performance and results driven. That means that ultimately the environment can often end up being very cutthroat, fraught with politics. Mona said it outright, the old boys networks. I was just going to simply say invisible affiliations in and outside the workplace. It used to be the golf course. It used to be the bar. It used to be the place where men used to congregate, and the backroom deals or the conversations and the jobs changed hands that women were generally excluded from because of the social and largely male social nature of that type of interaction. So mentorship's important, as is role model behavior important, because we have to understand, particularly as women, as you try to build up your career and move on up, you need someone to help you there. It's as simple as that. It's that guiding hand. And with a mentor or a role model, you're generally looking at someone who is senior, who's actually done this before you, and they've cut a path to leadership, much as Seema said, and invariably they have connections. And they can act as a guidepost for desired behaviors for you to emulate. And with mentors, invaluable support, as we've discussed, by acting as a sounding board really for situational needs, whether that's development needs at the same time, as well as advice on next steps on career progression. And ultimately, and I think this is important, and this is the big M mentorship that you talked about, advocating for you with those connections in their broader network, really to open the doors and to really develop you, not necessarily in their own image, but in a positive rendering of what they think in order for you to make you succeed as the industry changes. And interesting enough on that point, what we're seeing now more and more often, particularly in the finance industry and other segments, is reverse mentoring. And I myself actually find it very interesting. Like Mona, I do a lot of mentoring, and that probably is because of the absence of mentoring that I received actually as I was building my career. And one of the reasons that we do this is in order to gain insight into how new generations of employees are thinking, and also diverse groups, because inclusion and diversity matters. And if we're actually going to evolve as an organisation and attract and retain high quality diverse talent, we've really got to tap into that. So that's very, very important. We should think about mentoring as development, but we also should be open to reverse mentoring, to learn more and to understand what it is we need to do to move a workforce forward and to create inclusion for everybody.
Sonia, that's really, really well said. And from a personal standpoint, also coming from the finance background, I found reverse mentoring to be actually that much more effective in so many ways. Because when you turn the key on to, oh, this manager or this leader doesn't know what they're doing, or they don't have that empathy, or they don't understanding the teams they're leading, have somebody that's usually a lower rank person mentor them back. Talk to them, open up a whole different spectrum where they're not leading the way, but the person who's slightly on a different ranking mentors the way forward. So that is a real eye-opener and really helpful for a lot of people to do. So it's a great way forward, and I'm glad that you're practicing that yourself in the work that you do, and really see the benefits of that as well. So thank you for sharing. Saraba, you work directly with the silk weavers of Assam to produce your incredible fashion pieces, and I can see some hanging up behind you now. What impact does a role model have for these weavers and their families?
My answer will be a little different. I will go back to Seema. I think she took out a very interesting point about the Indra-Nui's small m and the big M. So in the corporate world, I got the small m and the big M. I was very lucky. But in the end, when I came into the entrepreneurship world, I don't know if it hits you guys right, but self-mentoring becomes a big M. And now coming to your question, I have worked, yes, directly with the silk weavers of Assam, also worked with skilled artisans in my factory in New Delhi, India, and my Toronto unit. I can proudly mention here that Tara Bhuya Couture is an all-inclusive brand, not only in our workforce, but also in our runways, in our campaigns, and in our advertisements. What we normally do when we talk about fashion, we connect with beauty, glamour, entertainment. Well, at Tara Bhuya Couture, beauty is what lies within and what we experience. I feel a woman's body is God's greatest creation. I love to drape them in different forms, but I always ensure to never objectify my models. Even in a small choli or a blouse or a backless dress, I make sure my models look dignified and elegant, sensuous, and not a sex object. Tara Bhuya is all about being a beautiful blend of traditional and modern mixed with a lot of elegance and grace. We include women and men, all sizes, ethnicities, cultures, and abilities. We try to portray real life, everyday people in a lot of our campaigns, showcasing the world, the beautiful, rich Indian traditional weave by our craftsmen, by our weavers. So we practice inclusion, gender equality amongst our workforce, and we give work and equal opportunities to chronically ill patients, especially in our weaving world. You know, my greatest role models are my diverse people in my workforce, which gives me a reason to celebrate Women's Day every day. Thanks, Rita.
Tara, thank you so much for sharing that, because that's really talking about role model in a very different spectrum and different lives, because look at the impact your work is making around the world, and how when people see those sort of role model and those sort of influences, how it can impact them and the beauty within as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. This has been such an invigorating discussion, and I'm so personally inspired by each of your stories of influence. To end the panel, I would like each of you to say a quick phrase of inspiration in celebration of global Indian women and all who are watching today's celebration. So Baishakhi, I'm going to start with you for your one-liner phrase.
So my one line would be to paraphrase Maya Angelou and say, courage is a must of all virtue, because without courage, you cannot practice any virtue consistently. So for all the women in India and everywhere in the world, I admire your courage. It takes a lot of courage to just be ourselves in everyday world. And I would always encourage each one of us to hold on to that. And thank you again. And thanks to everyone on this panel. I learned so much from each one of you today.
Thank you, Baishakhi, for sharing that. I love that, you know, that courage and that confidence. Thank you so much. Mona, how about you?
That's so beautifully shared, Baishakhi. Thank you. I'm going to paraphrase none other than our own Mahatma Gandhi. He said, be the change you want to see in the world. And I say, create the change you want to see for a gender equal world. Happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Thank you, Mona. I love that. Be the change you want to and create that change you want to see in the world. So wonderfully said. Thank you. Seema, how about you?
This is our year. This is our year to say yes, and I think that that is my phrase for all of us. Channeling Shonda Rhimes here a little bit. This is our year to say break the barriers and claim our voice, claim our narrative as a South Asian sisterhood.
Love it. This is our year. Claim it. You're the South Asian sisterhood. I love it. Thank you so much, Seema. Sonia, how about you?
I feel like I'm going to shortchange you because I didn't think about quoting somebody famous. I should have done that. So I'm just going to give you really what my life motto is, and maybe you can use it today and then throw it away and not use it again until tomorrow. So for me, it's be true to yourself and act with integrity.
Be true to yourself and act with integrity. Absolutely. Thank you, Sonia, for that. Tara, moving to you.
The quote is from my friend. I don't know if she has taken it from somewhere. A strong woman knows she has strength enough for the journey, but the woman of strength knows it is in the journey where she will become strong. Rita, I would rather regret the risk that didn't work out than regretting the chances that I didn't take at all. Believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and follow your passion, because that's when the best comes out. And I would take the privilege, Rita, on this special day. I want to take the opportunity to show my gratitude to all the mothers with a special child who always require strength, resilience, and endurance of another level. My dream is to integrate those children and their mothers into the mainstream. And how? With this, I would like to announce that Tara Bhuya Couture is opening the world to all the mothers of special needs child by having our first showcasing in New Delhi this fall. These women will come from various backgrounds, but they are all connected in this pain. I urge everyone in this panel and all the people in today and to all the audience to join me in this endeavor and help me get bigger. Thank you, and let's celebrate today and every day.
Amazing. Thank you so much. What wonderful words to end the panel on. And just for myself, I would love to say, and this is something a lot of people have heard me say before, that believe in yourself. Remember that inner goddess of go-getting is already inside of you. And on that note, be bold, be you, be Uma. So on that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for those incredible discussions. Now, I'd like to welcome some closing remarks from the First Lady of Assam, who is also the Managing Director and the founder of News Live as well, Riniki Bhuyan Sarma. Because it's rather late in India, she sent us a pre-recorded video. So I'd now like to invite that video to be played.
Namaskar and a very good evening. Let us celebrate the cause of womanhood on 8th of March on this beautiful day of International Women's Day. In fact, this year, the celebrating womanhood starts with a beautiful theme, break the bias. And today, in fact, I'm really privileged. I'm really proud to be among a panelist who is all set to break the bias, to bring us amongst the women a social, political, and an economic level, and who is ready to take the struggle on the hands. Today, it's been a pleasure to have amongst us the role models for all the women in the world. Baishakhi Taylor, Dean of Smith College, Vermont. Mona Sinha, Board Advisor, Philanthropist, New York. Seema Kumar, Global HSO, Office of Innov and JNJ Founder. Seema, New Jersey. Sonia Chaliha, Global Head Business, Development Corporate, Trust of BNY Mellon, New York. Tara Bhuya, Creative Director and Founder of Tara Bhuya Couture, Toronto. And also Rita Kakati-Shah, award-winning author, entrepreneur, and founder CEO of UMA, for moderating today's event. I would like to congratulate Rita Kakati-Shah on the launch of her book, The Goddess of Go-Getting. And I think this is a beautiful platform, and on a day of the title, The Goddess of Go-Getting, I think it will be a beautiful push for the womanhood who really wants to take the baton on their hands. Today, what I feel, to me among the panelists, that women's liberation or fighting for the cause of womanhood does not belong to a hand of a single feminist. It neither belongs to an NGO, it neither belongs to an organization, it neither belongs to a society as a whole. It belongs to every individual person who is a part of the society, wants to move ahead in life with a progress, with a cause, and with an effort, and who has stern belief in social, political, and economic progress as a whole. Today, We are very proud to be an Indian, especially why I'm saying because we in India always regards women as the Shakti, the feminine power, the deity, without which the very Shiva, Vishnu and Maheshwara is also incomplete without the feminine power. But unfortunately, with the highest honors given from the ancient India, slowly from monogamy to polygamy, then with the changes of eras where women tried to have their own respective fields, but somehow due to the patriarchal tendencies of a society, they have come down to a level of subduedness. But now, God has, I strongly believe that God has created all in equals. We cannot fight. We cannot go and box a male saying that, okay, fine, we are a woman. But God has created one thing equal, that is our head, and that is our brains, and through which we can conquer the world. So today, among the beautiful panelists, and with all the strong-headed and who are the leaders of the society in their own right, today I end with a quote. Hear me as a woman, have me as your sister, on the purpled battlefield breaking a day. So I might say, our victory is just a beginning. See me as a change. Say I am a movement, that I am the year and I am the era of the woman. With this beautiful motivational and inspiring quote by Amanda Gorman, I wish a very happy Women's Day to all the beautiful women in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Riniki Bhuyan Sarma, for that wonderful closing speech. And thank you everyone for joining us on today's special day, International Women's Day, to celebrate global Indian women everywhere.